I started reading Daughters of Bronze and I am ready to talk about it. So, if you're a little bit confused on why I'm holding a book that is called Horses of Fire and I'm talking about Daughters of Bronze, is because Daughters of Bronze is the second book of this duology and I don't own it physically. I am currently reading the book through NetGalley, so in order to have something to hold in my hands, I thought I would just hold the first book. But some very important context for this duology is that this is a Greek myth retelling. And in this retelling, you are watching the war of Troy versus Greece through the perspective of the people in Troy. So if you know even a little bit about Greek mythology, you know that this war does not end well for the people of Troy. So it is definitely a very interesting read for someone like me who absolutely loves Greek mythology. I have been obsessed with Greek mythology since I was like 12 years old. So I know exactly how this ends, which makes the story even more heart-wrenching because it's like you know the future and you don't want those things to happen because you fall in love with these characters so much. But then it's still gonna happen. I don't even want to say those words because I haven't finished the duology and a part of my brain still refuses to admit what's gonna happen is gonna happen, but I know what's gonna happen. And I think going into these books with that perspective makes it even more enjoyable than if you know nothing about Greek mythology. This is coming from a perspective of someone who really loves Greek mythology. And in order to understand these books and where we are in history, I feel like I need to give a little bit of background on why did the war on Troy start and who are the main characters that you are going to find in this duology. So basically the war between Greece and Troy started because there was this man whose name was Paris, and I'm going to try to keep this as easy to explain as possible. There is so much context here that if I were to talk through the whole thing, it would take me forever. So I'm going to try to keep it super quick and easy. But there's this man, his name is Paris, and according to the myth, there were three goddesses, Hera and Aphrodite and Athena, who asked him to choose which one of them was the most beautiful. And according to who he chose, that goddess was going to give him a gift. And so the goddess Aphrodite told him that if he chose her, he was going to give him the most beautiful woman in the world as his bride. And so he chooses Aphrodite, and the most beautiful woman in the world, her name was Helen. And she was already married to a Greek king. And so Paris goes to Greece to reclaim his reward, and he takes the most beautiful woman in the world. Her name was Helen, and he takes her to Troy. And basically, this incites the whole war between the Trojans and the Greeks. And so, in this story, we follow a couple of very important characters, starting with Helen. A lot of the times in Greek mythology, Helen is seen as almost this aloof woman who didn't really care about the fact that a war had been started in her name. And she's almost villainized a little bit, which really, if you think about the story a little bit, makes no sense because it wasn't her fault that she was chosen as the most beautiful woman in the world, and also that she was taken from her home. And so in this story, we actually get a little bit more about Helen and what actually happened with Paris took her from her home. We also see quite a bit of Paris as well, who in the regular myths, I feel like normally he is seen as this kind of like this naive character that is hopelessly in the tides of what's the gods decide to do. And this is definitely not the case. In this retelling, you get to see a lot more of that conniving and evil part of Paris, which I am definitely enjoying. We also follow Hector, who is called the best of the Trojans, and basically he is the one who is leading the army of the Trojans, and he's trying to protect his city from the Greeks that are coming in, trying to take back Helen. And very important context, he is the brother of Paris. And so he is always seen in Greek myth as this perfect character. He always tries to do his best, and till the end, he's always thinking about his country and what is best for his people. And in this series, it's not any different. You get to see exactly how great of a man Hector is, which breaks my heart even more. If you know anything about Greek mythology, you know that something really horrible happens to Hector, and I'm trying to straddle the line here between giving a lot of spoilers or not. So something really terrible happens to Hector at the end, and I think that is the part of the story that's really hitting me, because you fall in love with his character even more through these books, and you know that things are not going to end well for him. So it's really sad, and it breaks my heart every time that we get a scene of him being just amazing, to be honest. We follow Andromache, who is his wife. She was trained by one of the Amazons, and the Amazons were this group of warrior women who were very well known in Greek mythology. And so even though I feel like in regular Greek myth, you don't really hear that much about her, in this book, she is very much entrenched into the war strategy. She is very much Hector's right-hand woman. She helps with all the strategy. She's a warrior in her own right, which is super interesting because we don't get to see that part of her in the actual myths. And honestly, she's a badass. She's one of my favorite characters in here. We also follow Cassandra, who in Greek myth is one of Hector's sisters, who was cursed by the god Apollo to know what the future is going to bring, but having no one believe her when she tells people what's going to happen. And so this is a part of the retelling that I feel like really shifts from what we think we know through the Greek myths. But I think that is one of the most interesting parts of the book. You can see how in the actual myths, the gods are blamed for a lot of things that are actually because of actions made by men. Sometimes good actions, sometimes bad actions. And I think that really sets this retelling duology apart. And then the final important character is Rhea, who she is actually not in the real myths. So we don't know what her end is, and that is super interesting because she's the one character that I have no idea what's going to happen to her. And basically in the first book, she becomes a spy for Troy, and she infiltrates the Greeks to get information out of them. And then actually, final character that is really important in this one is Ajax, that is well known in the regular mythology as the best of the Greeks, one of the strongest warriors that Greece has to offer. And so we don't really get that much of Ajax, or at least I didn't know too much of him before this retelling, outside of like little bits and pieces where he is in the Iliad, and I believe he is a little bit on the Odyssey as well. But in this book, he's actually really lovable and has become one of my favorite characters, even though, technically he's with the villains, which are the Greeks. And I've been talking for a very long time, and I haven't even started talking about the actual book, just giving you a rundown of the characters and, you know, generally what's going on. So stay tuned for part 2 where I will actually talk about what happens in the book, because this has been super long.